To the Wednesday Finance meeting for the Board of Commissioners of Cumberland County. We use these get-togethers to talk about all kinds of good stuff, increasing revenue, controlling costs, and trying to make things meet. So today we have a number of things. Commissioner DeFluval, I'd like to turn it over to you to run the agenda, or you can call me like it's done.
All right, I'll continue here. Thanks, Larry. Good afternoon, everybody. I will ask at this time, is there anyone in the audience who would like to make comment on anything that is not on the agenda? Any public comment? Okay, hearing and seeing none. Our next item is the Cumberland Area Economic Development Corporation County Land Prospect. Mr. Bowser.
Sure. I will turn it over to Kirk to start us off.
Mr. Stone, you're going to be the short.
No, that's okay. Yeah. I just wanted to provide some background perspective. Back in, I looked today, April of 2013 is when we first started talking a little bit about excess county land. We have land that the county owns that we could sell for a variety of purposes. So we went through a process where we discussed the land that we were looking at, discussed the different options. We ended up putting together an agreement with John and his team over at Cadic to really put the property out there, market a little bit. And admittedly, I guess it was slow there for a while from 2014 till now. A prospect has come forward. John and his team have talked with him. I talked with him briefly. I believe it's a prospect that might be worth pursuing. But before we moved any further, we wanted to bring the issue back to the board and talk about, really, is the county still interested in selling that land? And if so, then that would kind of give John and his team, the committee that we have, the ability to move forward and work with the township. We've already done some outreach to the township, but to work with them through the process and really verify our interest of our prospect and kind of move through that project. So John will give you all the details from there.
Sure. So what we did back in, I looked at the date of this, was May of 2014, 2014 was, we signed an agreement with the county commissioners and the board at that particular time on a joint development agreement, which was between the Cumberland County Industrial Development Authority, which Cadic administers, and then also Cumberland County as well. And the gist of that agreement was to outline, kind of roles, responsibilities as far as, pursuing any potential end user that may be interested in the land that was identified by the county at that time that could potentially be looked at for a potential sell and or lease. So what we came up with in the framework of that was to go out and market the facility. Not the facility, but the land. See if there is any interest. So one of the things that we did early on, Kirk and I, and we went to the township and we wanted to better understand, what they were comfortable with, what type of development. I think the charge that we got back was if it fits within the current zoning, not too far off, something that we'd be interested in potentially taking a look at. So we've kind of worked that angle. As Kirk said, the market has been relatively soft along the corridor outside of distribution, which we know that the township did not want, so we respected that decision. Fast forwarding, till now, we have, a potential developer that's interested. I'll let Mary talk a little bit more about the specifics of the project. But what we wanted today, since there is a change in the board, we wanted to just revisit to make sure that the commissioners are still open, I think, to any proposal that may come before you in regards to the sale of any of the county land that was identified. Our hope would be, if that's the case, to continue with the plan that was kind of outlined in the agreement back in May of 2014. So with that said, I'll pass it over to Mary to talk more about the project.
So how do we give you a map so we can actually see what we're doing? That usually helps. So the property we're looking at is actually off of Army Heritage Drive. So the prospect that came and met with our organization is a Native American Heritage Center. Ideally, it's a nonprofit comprised of a number of organizations with Native American heritage. They're looking at a parcel right in proximity to AHAC and to where the Indian school was located, over at the Carlisle Barracks. Ideally, what they would like to do is create this heritage center. It would be an attraction for the area, but also pay homage to a number of historical events that have happened in Cumberland County. The organization that did come before us is comprised of about 141 Native American tribes that are coming together to do this, and there's interest from another set of Native American tribes as well. So it's a pretty substantial project with a backing, at least nationally. But they are, so when they came and talked to us about it, we did go and talk to the township just to see if something like this Heritage Center would be within their current zoning. Right now, the property is zoned residential farm. It would fall under a special exemption, but it would be permissible to do this type of facility at first glance. I mean, we would have to still go through the proper process, but it would be permitted in that special exemption under a residential farm in Middlesex Township. So,
The county owns this, but we have to abide by the township's zoning. Is that what okay. Learn something new. Okay.
and so I highlighted and circled on the back of the parcel where we would most likely be interested in.
How big is that parcel?
So 21 acres is the size of the parcel. I think for their facility, they're looking anywhere between 6 to 10 acres roughly, as far as actual improvements to the property.
So you're only looking at one of the three parcels that are outlined here.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
But they're acquiring that entire parcel. They're only developing 10, but they're acquiring it.
I think that would be part of the conversation moving forward, is that would they be interested in the entire 21 acres, and or would they be looking to subdivide to only take a fraction of that? I think the cleanest way would be that they would take the 21 acres, but I think that would be a further conversation.
We clearly have an interest in what they would want to do with the rest of the acreage if they were
Correct.
planning to subdivide it or so.
Correct. I mean, ideally, if you just think about it, for a second, you have this facility, you have AHEC, you have the barracks, there could be some other supporting amenities, more retail focused, maybe lodging, that could be ideal. However, that would trigger a rezoning by the township, but at this juncture, they're very interested in their project, in seeing that get off the ground, which would not require any rezoning.
So, forgive me if I missed this, but because there's no need to address the zoning issue per se, we don't need to address the interest that the township had expressed in having more input into what possible uses we were interested in. But you have or have not talked to the township, they're aware of this proposal?
Yes.
Their reaction has
Yes.
been?
Kirk and I have spoken to him. I've spoken to him again. Mary's spoken to him this morning, just to make sure that they were aware that, this may come before them, or they may hear about it through media outlets or other things they do. So wanted to make sure that they were aware of the project and they weren't blindsided.
Particular reaction, specific reaction from the positive, negative?
No, when we met with the township initially to discuss the project, as Mary alluded to, it falls under their special exemption, which is still a process, but there was nothing that we felt was alarming coming from them that we needed to address ahead of time.
I think the first time we met with them, Gary, there was concern over really intense development in that corridor,
Right.
because the infrastructure is probably not the best to support that. So I think that was kind of their charge back to us. If it was something really intense, they may not be so apt to look at it, but it's something that fits within their existing zoning and kind of the character of that community, it would work. You look at AHAC right across the street, you get a similar feel there for that corridor. And then also from tourism perspective, too, we're starting to aggregate some of our resources in one location. It just makes a lot of sense.
The county owns that land immediately behind public safety building and the and the Office of Aging, right? That's our property behind there, directly across from AHEC, is that right? That's not part of this?
No.
Okay, but that the county owns that property as well?
Yes.
Okay. Now, the other thing I'm looking at here is this one parcel, you say it's, how many acres? The one parcel?
21.
21 acres. All right. What about that other parcel, that 2108, 0575, 120? Would that become landlocked if they only purchased the 21 acres?
Yeah, we talked to township about it. I mean, there would have to probably be some type of, road networks or access,
Some easement.
easement, back there. So that would have to be part of,
Because if that would become landlocked, I mean, it would be, essentially worthless.
what we found out from the township though is that, correct me if I'm wrong, 20 and 21 have some limestone, and they also have some, I'm trying to think of the other issue that they have back there as far as land.
Yeah, I think they advise, there's a lot of sinkholes.
There's a lot of sinkholes, yeah, sinkhole and limestone, and so
Yeah.
it may not be that developable.
Look,
Either way.
in the end, you can always put a microbrewery back there.
I like that idea.
Well, in any event, that's something we're going to have to look at because, essentially, if anybody wants to get to that parcel, you would have to cross through this property, it looks like, or cross through the other one, which is not part of this proposal, right?
Correct.
0575
You could buy 21, but it's forested. Is that when I'm looking at that correctly? It's
Yes.
forested.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
So
I thought it would be a great paintball facility.
This
Shows you where your emphasis is.
So John, they're looking at parcel 119,
Correct.
and of that 21 acres, did you say they're looking at maybe needing 6, 7?
6 to 10, somewhere in that.
So yeah, it would make sense if they just bought the whole thing.
Correct.
Maybe have some option there, an easement, access easement available. But based off what you're saying, what is targeted to go in there, I think it's a good thing. At this level,
Yeah.
I mean, the Army Heritage Center right across the street.
So,
Their initial reaction, I say, is good for me.
just to raise a question on the very, very narrow issue of tourism. Clearly, there's a lot of appropriateness for there to be, given, the whole Carlisle School, Jim Thorpe, that history. But without any casting any opinion one way or the other on any of the other aspects of this. I think one thing to consider is there have been issues with AHEC in terms of its draw as a regional tourist entity, given the fact that this, the military has plans to build something along the lines of an Army museum down in Fort Belvoir. Well, about 10 years ago, they built a huge Native American museum in the Heritage Center down in the mall in Washington, D.C. So I'm not saying that there can't or shouldn't be more than one. I'm not saying that we're so close to D.C., but there may be some issues with this akin to the issues that we have with AHEC, just in terms of multiple sites commemorating the same thing and competing for the same tourist market. And that may or may not be consequential at all in any of this, but it's just one thing to consider.
I know I haven't had any conversation with them, Shereen. I don't know if they've mentioned this other
I have. We've, thematically, it's premature to understand what's going to go inside this building on this 6 to 10 acre thing. Certainly the Carlisle Indian School and that part of our U.S. history has not been told
And it is not
anywhere.
represented down in
It's
D.C.
not represented in DC. So that would be the primary, the initial focus. And the reason that they've selected Carlisle as the place for this new asset is that there was a direct tie to Carlisle. They don't want to go to Mechanicsburg or to Ohio, to build this
It's
thing.
kind of like sacred ground.
Yeah. But beyond that, I've had many meetings with the Bureau of Indian Affairs, which in essence is the Native American tourism arm. And they have studies and research and facts and numbers and data that tells us that from a tourism perspective, Native American history is a significant driver for Native American travel. That Native Americans are looking to reach back and touch their heritage, and there's really no place to go because it related to the Indian school era, and also from a European travel market segment, that there's great interest in understanding the Native American history. Our Native American history is actually overtaking our Civil War history or our American Revolutionary War history. The future of tourism, or as it relates to heritage tourism, Native American seems to be the next wave.
It'll never take, nothing's going to take over from the Civil War. But my only point here is that for whatever other reasons we want to do this, I don't think the expectation is, should be, that there may not be issues like there are with AHEC in terms of its ability to draw, given competing things that are close enough by to be within the day's drive. That's my only point.
Just so I'm clear, so given the number of Indian nations that you mentioned there, so this is not just a local regional focus, this is essentially a nationwide.
Nationwide.
So,
That is just some information that they give us, and you can use on your
To the extent that it does focus more narrowly on local stuff, it would be unique. To the extent that it's more nationwide focus, it gets to be more like what they're doing in DC, which is much more, just very different.
I think it's going to be built to scale for their audience. I definitely think it's going to be more, a bit smaller than DC and more definitely built to scale. But it is a national, these are groups from all over the country coming together for this project. So they pulled in a number of different parties, which to me says if it was, one or two Pennsylvania nations that were interested, I think you might be a little bit more skeptical, but they've pulled in a number of them from all over the country, so.
I'm going to rebut what you said, just to a small degree, in that the museum in DC, have you been to it? It's extraordinary, and it's just bursting at the seams. There's certainly plenty more material that can be used elsewhere. And a lot of people would have said the same thing about competition with the annex to the Air and Space Museum only being 25, 30 miles away from the National Mall with the Air and Space Museum Central location. And yet there's plenty of market for both of them. And they both have plenty of offers. So I think it might be more complicated than that. So, but that's not the issue before us today. Anyhow, so it's fun to talk about. This, I agree with Vince, I think it's a really intriguing potential.
Well, I would say that, this is unique, and I think that, it certainly would complement, I think, what we already have in place with the Norma Heritage Education Center in terms of being a potential tourist destination. But the reason why we discussed this, I guess, 3 or 4 years ago, was with respect to our financial situation here in the county, looking for ways to bolster our position, and the consideration, if I recall correctly, Gary can correct me if I'm wrong, but essentially what excess land do we have that we don't have any foreseeable need for in terms of county government operations. And then the next part of this question will be along the lines is, we're required if we're going to sell public asset, county land, to make sure we get fair market value, to make sure we're getting, I think for our taxpayers, make sure we're getting top dollar for it. So, and then I think it was also discussed at the time that we needed to work in partnership with our local municipality in terms of whether there would be any need for rezoning or consideration of rezoning. You're suggesting with this proposal there would not be a need for rezoning. How do we, has there been an offer made in terms of, and what is the price per acre that's been offered? And do we have to, and our solicitor's not here, but do we have to consider other proposals in terms of the sale of this property, or how does, I know there's probably some legal issues that need to be considered if we're going to sell public property.
And not to be, this is not meant to be a damper, but frankly, the most complicated question, this came up whenever, even in the abstract, the discussion of if the day were to ever come when we would sell the nursing home, you have basically an asset that's held in the public trust. So yes, you can get top dollar for it, and what do you do with the money? And I think that's not anything we have to deal with today. That can become the most complicated question that we, as the Board of Commissioners, would face, not necessarily, immediately relevant to this.
Anyway, in on that question just a little bit. So, for the sake of clarity, and some folks in the room who weren't here, including our friends from the meeting, they, at the time, yes, that the proposal came forward as part of the budget situation. And as background, the land that is out there, and that's Middlesex Township, is that correct? The land that's out there was assembled, I guess, over time, but at one point there had been a thought, probably 20 years ago, of a potential county campus in which we consolidate a large number of county offices on a single site. And there were architectural renderings made and such. I don't know if they're still in your office or not.
They are, and it's still an active plan.
What's different, though, is that over time, we did act on a number of other real estate opportunities, including the Brittner Building and the Allen Building. So we essentially acquired existing real estate assets to put to work for the county's incremental expansion needs instead of going to a singular campus. Now, there were also some problems with the singular campus idea because Middlesex Township is obviously not the county seat. Apparently, there's some legal requirements that certain core functions of the county government, in particular the county courts, must be in the county seat. So we generally determined that the original grand scheme plan, I don't want to say scheme because it sounds negative, it's not meant to be pejorative, but it was less relevant. And so as a result, there was a lot of confidence, at least on my part, that these were surplus lands. We didn't have really any envisioned or potential use for that accumulation of land. So the idea of selling it became a piece of several proposals put forward to address the county's shortfall budget-wise. But it was discussed at the time that we were seeking not just a one-time shot in the arm to close a 1 year or 2 year gap, but the idea too also was to return some of those parcels to the tax rolls and hopefully encourage the type of development that they would provide a meaningful addition to the tax base of the county on a forward-looking basis. A lot of concerns were expressed at the time regarding the types of impacts. We didn't want to do a fast sale. We didn't want an undesirable application out there that we'd be stuck with forever. So, both by design and somewhat by circumstance, it's been a very protracted process, a deliberative process. We needed to make sure we proceeded correctly legally, and that to address Jim's question, that we were meeting our legal obligation to try to find and achieve a good market value on the property. We had a lot of people who wanted us to give them the property for $1, promising to develop it. That's not the kind of deal I think any of us were interested in at the time, or probably now either. So the idea was to move that land into a higher, better use, but to also be mindful of the impacts and the type of return to the community. Now, the return to the community is partly financial, so market value matters. You got that legal responsibility. I like this idea too because while it's harder to measure, the return to the community could be significant in terms of you've got a very low negative impact application use potentially, but also a possible great addition to what we want to do that complement, supplement what Army Heritage Center is doing there. And it's a greater than the sum of the parts type of approach where you get a critical mass. You have not one facility, but you have 2 or 3 facilities, and now we're starting to provide additional benefits that no one of them would provide individually. So I think it's a potentially a better application than we probably could hope for. So in terms of the return on investment we were hoping for, I think there's some intangible aspects here too that we need to factor in if we're going to talk about the return to the community, the value to the community, of taking this land out of essentially passive use or non-use, so it's not really such a thing, and now turning it into more active use. So it's, as I say, it's an intriguing prospect. The one thing I would want to mention is, I don't know the particulars of this, but I know there are lots of municipal entities and cities and such that will put a piece of city-owned property out for, and just request proposals for development. And it's a pretty wide open process, and they've met the obligation at that point. So I'll say, even attaching up to the dollar value to it is simply let's prospect and see what's out there. So I think it's probably fairly easy to meet the legal requirement of ensuring fairness.
Gary, we researched this back in 2013. County code, at the time we worked with Keith or Ed, I forget who was around then, but the current county code requires must sell or lease the land at fair market value. The fair market value has to be determined by consultation with the county assessor, a certified broker, or a certified real estate appraiser, 2 of those.
Okay.
And then we have to disclose any natural resources thought to be present on the land, and any improvements on leased lands are subject to taxation. Any improvements on leased lands are subject to taxation. So they were kind of the 4 criteria that came out of the county code that we have to follow.
So they're in the county code. Okay.
So this is what we got last time. We had Keith or Ed for you to us to take a look at, initial look at the sellable land.
So actually, from what you're telling me, even if the county was inclined to pull one of these sell for $1 deals, we wouldn't legally be able to do that, as some communities do.
Unless you want to go to jail.
Not particularly, so.
Just, do we have any information on, in documents, incorporation documents for the Native American organization? They have 501c3. Who exactly is members? Where does their funding come from? What's their voting? How do their decision-making go? That sort of thing.
We can request that information. I think we may have some of that now, but we would.
They are a 501c3, but I can certainly request that.
So they've been in existence, they weren't formed just for this
They
venture?
were formed for this purpose.
It was formed specifically for this venture, okay.
Within the
That's
past
all.
year. I've been working with them probably over the last 18 months.
Okay.
And they have looked at other properties and other partnerships.
In other states?
No, here.
Just around?
Here.
Okay.
And to feed off of what you said, Gary, it's not just AHEC where there's going to be a creation of some great synergies, but with the Cumberland County Historical Society, that is the repository for all things Carlisle Indian School with their photo collection. And then also Dickinson College's archives that are in the process of being digitized. I anticipate that there would be great synergies between this facility, AHEC with the Army story part of it, Historical Society with the college, so it's
So
more
there
than
would
just
be-
across Army Heritage Drive.
Yeah. Okay, and that sounds like there would be a local angle, quote unquote,
Yes.
as well, which this area, we have plenty of connection with French and Indian Wars, which is a natural tie into to the Carlisle Barracks as well, so it does sound like a great deal.
We've had a lot of conversations amongst the parties, including the garrison, the barracks, Historical
John
Society.
Stewart burned down the Carlisle Barracks, the Army place, on his way to get his, nice guy.
Not here.
Yeah,
Was
they burned him down.
it here?
Yeah.
I thought it came from Chamber.
No, that was in '64 with the two Berlin. They burned Chambersburg and
Chambersburg, okay.
Jonathan,
So let me ask
sure,
this.
Mary, do you have any other comment?
No, I think to your point, I mean, they're prepared to pay fair market value. We would go through that process. To the point of, this would be, I would assume, on tax exempt property, but you get the ripple effect of visitor spending, which
So
pays
there-
taxes.
I'm sorry, they're not looking for any incentives, this is a cash transaction essentially,
Yes.
is what's envisioned, okay.
Well, based on what you presented, I think the three of us are in agreement.
Yeah.
Well, see, Jim, go ahead.
Yeah, I just clarify there, presume we're tax exempt. Because I know we've had a lot of, discussion with respect to what is a purely public charity and with respect to real estate tax exemption. But I think that's something we want to factor into our consideration as well.
Yeah.
I mean, because this, I understand the argument, beneficial potentially to the economy in terms of increasing tourism. That has a spin-off effect on the region, but I'd like to know specifically as to whether it's tax exempt or not. Because part of what Barry mentioned was, part of the consideration was to possibly return some of these parcels to tax revenue. So if we're not doing that, I think we need to do that for sure.
Or the entire parcel.
Correct. And I think that decision is made by the tax system.
Part of our standard due diligence for anything like this, regardless of what the project would be to have our solicitor have as much documentation about the party with whom we're doing business or proposing to do business, so that they can perform their due diligence to make sure that everything was legit. We do this no matter who it was with. So that documentation on this organization, I think is really key. That should probably be given to our service.
So that's part of the reason that we're here today. One, to ascertain, is this Board of Commissioners interested in considering a sale?
You got your
And we
answer.
got that. The second reason is a process was put into place through this agreement that was executed well over a year ago through the industrial, through the IDA, that there would be a committee in place in which the IDA is a party, we're a party, I think Kirk is a party. Not sure who else is a part of this group. Municipality, that this group would vet the project, which would could include, the organizational structure and the taxability of the project.
I remember the IDA agreement vividly. First of all, there's nothing in the agreement that binds any party in that to do anything. And it doesn't preclude the obligation of each party to perform its own due diligence for any point.
Yes, I understand. So the second reason that we're here is to ascertain that you still want us to go through this process that was defined well over a year ago. Because we don't want to take the developer down this process needlessly if you would prefer to deal with it in a different manner.
Yeah, and not all not-for-profits are tax exempt, so I would like to know that.
But it also would depend on the development plan, and they may also subdivide it for a taxable purpose, or use part of the facility for a taxable purpose. So all that would be hashed out later.
And even if they sublease, going back to some of the requirements, then that sublease, you would, if they had a restaurant inside, for example, that they would pay taxes. So I would think that this, the development committee that was created and established this agreement, which included Kirk as a representative to the county, would then come back with a lot more of this information to be able to pass along to the solicitor and then ultimately back to the Board of Commissioners.
There's plenty of opportunity to address this. I do
Then
have one question. I'm only asking half jokingly, but there's no attachment, prospect of a casino attachment on this?
No, I've asked that
It's a legitimate question.
If you don't ask that question, you're living in La La Land. You just drive with me through the state of New Mexico.
No, that is not right. I
Drive through
think Serena asked that
I
question.
asked
today,
it
so it's
pretty early and often.
Yeah.
Certainly an impact we would want to take under consideration.
Thank you, folks, for
Thank
coming
you.
in and presenting this to us.
Thank you.
on the agenda, we have a regarding marijuana obligation, Dana and Brad, PFM. Welcome.
Good to see everybody again.
Yeah.
And Dawn Krauser is also here.
I'm sorry.
Yes.
You are,
I am Donna Kaiser with McNeese Wallace and Murray.
all right, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Proceed.
So, I'm gonna let them pass the good news on, but we're here to talk about the new funding that I've been talking about for a while that was coming. So I'll put a little bit of wrap on.
Great. So you have a packet here that I handed out to you as a green cover. As you know, one of the jobs we all have is to keep an eye on your debt and see if there's any refinancing opportunities. We're getting close to the call date on this 2008 bond. It looks like there's going to be significant savings that we can realize. Again, we're assuming that you want to move forward with this in the spirit of trying to control expenses and so forth. So I'll go through a couple scenarios we ran through for you to talk about. The second page of my handout basically is an interest rate chart. Every financial advisor I have a color chart. I tell you where the market is. You can see on that chart that rates continue to remain low. The one I like to point out is the chart in the middle with the gray bars. That's a yield curve. And the gray bars show you from the last 10 years, the high point, the low point. The red line is the average, and the blue is where we are today. So we all know rates are low, and even from if you look at the last 10 years, we're really in a super position in terms of this timing of this refinancing. The next page is a one-page summary that I know that we all keep available to us. It looks at all the different payments for the county. Debt payments that listed by bond issue by calendar year, and then aggregates it in column number 7. Right now, the 08 bonds is the one on the left that we're talking most about. I just took a look at the interest rate on that. The fixed rate is around 4%. That's about where it is right now. If you look at the bottom there, towards after all the boxes, it says the call date. That's May of 2016. So that's the time when you can prepay at any time without a penalty. You'll notice just to the right, and we'll talk a little bit about this. The 2010 bond had its call date in November of last year, but when we're looking at the numbers, there were really no savings by doing the refinancing. As you can see, it's really short. There's not a lot on it. So that was something that we just kind of didn't even talk about, but we will talk about today because we may want to, we're keeping an eye on it to see if we want to include it in this, just because we can save some of the costs by doing it simultaneously. But I'm not really sure, Dana and I have been talking about whether we really want to do this or not. I'll get to that in a second. Page number 3 is the first scenario that we ran. This is the scenario where we took more of the savings up front. The refinancing savings from the 2008 bond is in the blue colored column. You will see there somewhere in the neighborhood of about 1.5 million over the life. The present value is about 1.46 million. That's at the bottom. You'll see what we did there is we took them, like I said, a little bit more up front. If you were to go back and look at column 5, which is in the black column area, you'll notice that the county's general obligation debt is about $7.5 million for the next 3 years, okay, including the year you're currently in. Then it drops to 5.9, and then it continually drops down a little bit. So the thought on this structure, this option was, let's take the savings over the next 3 years to have the biggest impact of your budget for the next couple of years, because then your debt's going to naturally drop down over time. So you would be going from column 5 to column 8. So such that the first 3 years are the most affected, and then you kind of return back to where you were going to be otherwise. That was the thought process on that option for your consideration. The one thing that I should mention, I mentioned this when this refinancing we're talking about is a high to low, which means higher rates, replace higher rates with lower rates. We're not extending debt. Okay, we're just replacing the higher rates with lower rates. And all the numbers that I'm showing you here are net of any budgeted expenses from the transaction, so it's true net savings. Okay, the next page, page number 4, was a little bit of a different savings structure. This was one where we essentially were just taking the same amount of savings every year. Level savings, 125 grand a year would be the savings every year. So all the years that's left on this bond, which go about 12 or so years, you'd see $125,000. You'll notice to the far right in column 8 that the impact to your budget is about 125 grand, and that would have an impact on all 12 years left. Clearly, the first option has more of an impact, a larger impact to your budget. You can lop off about 600 grand next year in terms of savings. and then your debt's gonna naturally drop down. But we wanted to at least show you both ways you could potentially think about your savings. I don't need to come out of here today knowing what you want to do. But we did want to make sure that you had a couple different ways to look at this from a refinancing standpoint. There's a lot of other schedules attached, so to the extent you have questions, I might refer to them. But these 2 pages that I gave you, the blue and red, summarize it with the executive summary, so I'm not going to bore you going through some details that the three of us might fill up through. But I did want to attach it for you, so if you have any questions or you want to look more detail where we're at, I can answer that. One thing I should mention though is I will flip you ahead to page number 15, excuse me, not 15, page number 10, excuse me, and the interest rate that we assumed you retain your AAA rating, and the refinancing, the box in the middle of that page was a little over 2%, so you can see going from 4 to 215 or so, that's where your savings would be generated. So I just want to point that out. The other thing that I failed to mention too, Dana, do you mind going back to one of those 2 color pages? Excuse me. Right there. You'll notice in the red, those are the savings being generated by that 010 bond. There's not a lot to it. Okay, there's just a little bit. So we're still scratching our heads figuring out whether or not we want to include that or not. It's always nice to save whatever you can in terms of dollars. But at the same time, we have to make sure that when we do the bid, that both of these refinancings generate savings, okay? And we have to make sure that depending on how this is bid, we got to show savings on both. So depending on where the market is, because we are dealing with such a short piece, we have to make sure that those rates, okay, aren't impacted over the next 60 days, because those are the rates that are most impacted by what the Federal Reserve does. So I wanted to put it in here to let you know we're thinking about it. I'm not sure where this is all going to go, but nonetheless, it's on the radar screen. We might be doing just below. So there's, happy to answer any questions, or Donna, is there anything?
No, I don't have anything to add.
Is there a downside to this?
There really isn't. The only downside could be is if interest rates fell even lower. Because if you refinance, then we're going to kick the call date down for 7 or 8 years from now. But to tell you what's coming up, I mean, I'm always thinking about it. You have another refinancing that's coming down the pike, your 011 bond. So if rates fall, you have an opportunity to capture savings on that one. So that's really the only thing I should mention there. If you want us to move forward, I put on the back page a little bit of a timeline. We would start working on dealing with the rating agency. Donna's got to do a lot of work with us in terms of putting disclosure documents and documents together and ordinance. And then we would probably be ready for your in April. When we take the bids and then come back to the.
Do we get to sit in the room?
You can if you want.
Have a sit in the room.
If you do, that's what we'd probably do again. And then come to a meeting. I think we usually meet on Thursday morning. Put it on the back. I was assuming that we might take bids on April 20th or so.
Brad, let me ask you a question. Let me put it to you this way. Why would we not take advantage of option 1 as opposed to option 2?
Option 1 has the most direct benefit to you right now. The only reason you wouldn't take care of option 1 is if you knew in the next couple of years you had a significant borrowing and you needed new money for.
Okay.
Because what you would essentially, I don't know how you're going to handle this, but if you were dropping your line item in your budget from 7.5 to 6.8, you could use that money for whatever you want. If you wanted to keep a line item in your budget higher for capital, then you might do option 2. But if you don't foresee a major project or major borrowing in the next couple of years.
Well, we already got a new president of the new safety.
I think either option that we would go with are viable because the present value of both options are relatively close.
Right.
So that's kind of what we wanted to show here also was show the savings up front or over time. It's relatively the same as it, I mean, you make the decisions based on how it's going to impact you, but there's no real overall difference
So
in the refinance.
But if I'm looking at this, I mean, essentially, in 4 years, we're back to the same level of debt service.
Right.
Under either option, right?
Right.
Okay.
I mean, really technically, the second option is 125 grand less.
Every year.
Every year.
The first one takes your savings up front.
Right.
And
There's greater savings if you go with option be, total. So, you got a
That's true,
long-term
yeah.
perspective, then save more.
But on a present value basis, it's very similar.
Because your rates are higher later, so.
Brad, before you can proceed, you say you don't need a determination on what option we would pick. You do.
No, I don't need one today.
Okay.
I mean, we want one obviously before April 20th. So
Okay.
again, we're giving you this information, there's a lot to think about here, so, take your time, think about it, data point, relay which one we look. There's a lot of work we need to do either way.
But we know we can't use these savings for, recurring expenses, so, but it's going to help us, I think, with any, capital purchases we might want to make. But it's a significant savings, to do the refunding.
We've been
No
watching.
matter which option we take, it's really, I use the word a lot, it's really, no brainer, but I think it's important. I'm just trying to understand, I mean, yes, if we took the annual savings over a longer period of time, generate a little bit more in terms of total savings, but our debt service costs are going to be the same under both scenarios. Or roughly the same.
Roughly the same. We just
Is
like
that
to.
right, Ron?
This is a good decision to have to make.
Yeah. Do any board members have any other comments? Staff have any comments?
I think it probably makes sense, Sandy, for us to target a workshop meeting sometime either later in March or early April. In the meantime, I think, if commissioners have questions, obviously they can funnel them through Dana. If we need to bring people back in, we can bring them back in, just so we're not rushed. And if we plan, if mid-April is what you're doing, if we have this all taken care of and put to bed by the end of March, beginning of April, then we should.
We're going to get a 1.5% rate.
Hey, that's my goal. That's my goal. I have a 215.
Like we did with the last one, Dan?
That was great.
That was so much
1.39.
1.39?
So much fun to watch the numbers go down.
You weren't around for that, that's good. It was with the funding for the nursing home for the transitions.
Yeah.
And that bid, you'll want.
Excellent percentage.
You got one for township. Land preservation.
Yeah, I forget what that
It was under 2%.
Right. Yes.
Okay.
And they drew that money down. They did all
I
that.
did before I thought, I told you
Yeah,
guys
right.
every damn dollar. And it's not county business, I'm sorry.
A lot of other counties would like to be in this situation.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Greg, we'll get started working, getting some of the stuff together. We'll let you noodle on what page you want, and then, we'll be happy to come back again if you want any update. And not at the very least, we'll still try and target your April meeting.
Great.
Okay.
That's
Thank you, folks.
Thanks.
Thanks a lot.
Bye-bye. Okay, next. Dana, 2015 ending fund balance.
It's time to move on to more good news.
Yes.
Something good.
And I hate to do that.
Not much.
No. We're ending our, let me start by saying, these are preliminary numbers and we're still under audit, so it could be adjusted. But we're estimating that ending fund balance is going to be about $26.5 million for 2015. That's 127 days of fund balance, and it's an increase from 14 of $2.8 million. And we did move $289,000 out of unassigned fund balance into restrictions because of restrictions on money that currently exist. Revenue increased. I'll start with going over adjustments that actually happened from 14 to 15, the changes that occurred. And revenues increased $1.4 million, or about 1.95%. The majority of that is related to real estate tax, and that was 1.7%. And the important thing to note, that's natural growth, that's not a tax increase.
Question. In the past, we've had discussion on this. As a general rule of thumb, said our revenues grow around 1% a year. Is this that out of, are we actually, how does how do you square this with, are we that much of an outperformer, or is that just an obsolete number?
It's in line with our percentage that we have budgeted.
It is in line. So
It is in
our
line.
natural growth has actually been closer to this number than it has to 1%.
This year, it was closer to that. In the past, it's been about 0.95%. And there's a lot of things that go into this number. This is just a raw collections data,
Yes.
but we also have uncollectibles. So if we receive some of our past collections at a higher rate this year as opposed to last year, that intertwines in it.
You mean some of the delinquent?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
All right.
So this is the net of everything.
Okay.
And there's a lot more to it.
But for planning
Appeals
purposes-
come off of this,
Oh,
everything,
okay.
you know, so.
So
you know,
but for budget purposes, the 1% number is still a fairly valid number for us to
I think we
think in
moved
terms of
it up to about 1.2. We moved it up a little bit.
on average. So over the long term, our average revenue growth is now 1.2.
Don't hold me to that exactly, but it's, yes.
Okay.
Well, if I recall correctly, we have very few delinquencies, right?
In comparison to other counties, correct.
Okay, well,
But during the downturn, they did.
Yes.
Uptick, of
And I
course.
think last year we had some collections that rolled over into 2006.
But I guess the question is, this is not a one-time fluke,
No.
okay?
The growth
This is a result of identifiable processes. And we have uncollectibles every year. You use historical averages to calculate, to dampen the net on the gross. But this kind of shows that our, new housing starts and increasing housing values to some extent.
Yes.
what I'm interested in is, this is 2014, at the end of 2014 to the end of 2015, right?
Correct.
Okay, 1.7% growth.
Yes.
And if I remember correctly, when I first became commissioner, we had pretty much flat
Yes.
growth.
Yes.
So how much of an improvement is this compared to what it's been prior 2-3 years?
I have that number, I just didn't bring it up.
Okay.
with him.
If you go back to the PFM presentations.
Yes.
PFM presentations did show, again, increased expenses, much higher than current, increase in revenues much lower, and it was
Right.
less than, I think it was less than 5.5%. I mean, it was pretty modest. So this is more than their model.
But I just want to put this in context. Essentially, I'm going to paraphrase what I think you said. We have good years, we have bad years. This is a good year number.
This is a good
Okay,
news.
but we can't count on 1.7 every year. It's part of the cycle. This is worth basically the top end of the cycle.
No, but
For
I-
now, we can count, I think we have about 1.7 in next year's budget also. I think that for the short run, yes, we can count on the numbers being about this, but we'll get big moves in growth, it's gonna go up, and
Okay.
if you have a decline,
If
it'll
there
go
was,
back down.
yeah, if there was a recession or yet another housing bubble,
Yes.
Not if there's, when there will be a recession. So
there
It's-
I'm very optimistic.
realistic.
It would be nice to see, maybe going back over the past decade, to see what the revenue growth was.
Okay. I think we do have it. We'll get it together.
PFM, and I'm assuming we got that.
And you say that,
It's less.
so this was factored in, this percentage was, in terms of revenue growth, was factored in then the 2016 budget.
Yeah, this would have been 2015, but yes, it was factored in, and the growth was factored in 2016 also. And when we get to the next section, I do a projections to budget,
Okay.
actual projections, and it'll show you that we were relatively close.
Before we go there, no arguing this is a wonderful number, and a credit to market forces, and as well as internal management, because there's the expense management side. Would this number have even been better had it not been for the state budget increase to any significant extent? Or does that really not have an effect by the time this all worked itself out?
I believe that our fund balance may have been lower had there not been state budget impacts, because we postponed a lot of spending. And so there may be a little bit on the expense side next year that comes back to that. We postponed capital, we postponed employee travel and other things that may have caused a little bit of a blip on the expense side of the equation. We watched it actually. When we were doing the projections monthly, we actually saw our projections changing pretty dramatically based on the changes in spending. And some of that will probably be forever, but some of it will be a bounce back up. Make sense? And then the other revenue increased about $550,000. And there on the expense side and the revenue side, the GIS project was a capital lease, and we had to approve the $283,000 on both sides. So that's supposed to be the revenue and then the capital. So when we turn the page and talk about capital, a large piece of that was that project. The expenses increased $1 million, and that was about 1.6%. Salary and benefits, about $500,000 or 1.3%. Capital was 35%. The majority of that was that GIS project that I had discussed. And subsidies increased $658,000 or 9.3%. The majority of that was children and youth. And the debt decreased $433,000, and that was because we used the capital project fund, what was remaining from the prison project, to pay some of the debt service to get that project money spent. And then if there's any residual project expenses that come up, we'll have to pay it on the general fund. Okay, the next section is talking about our changes from the last projections that we gave you in October. And the fund balance that we were projecting was about $25.3 million, so there's a difference of about $1.2 million. The revenue difference is $881,000 or 1.24%. The tax revenue, there's a difference of 0.1%. Now, one thing that I need to talk about also is after 60 days, we have to do an analysis because we get a lot of collections, or sometimes we don't, in that last 15 days of February. And we do have to go back and make an adjustment for that of about $129,000. That's how much it varies from year to year. It's not very good. Other revenue is up $814,000 or 3.9%. A piece of that was a $238 from the capital lease, and the other two bigger items are commissions and expense reimbursement. And then on the expense side of the equation, we were within 0.9% or $640,000. Operating was lower by $260,000. Subsidy was higher by about $340,000, and capital decreased $710,000. And part of that was from the impacts. And then we had to adjust $289,000 from unassigned to restricted. So that is one good news for the day. And, you know, the audit is still occurring, so if anything is found during that audit, of course, it will be adjusted. And we are expecting that fund balance to be 26.6.
So Dana, would you consider this luck? Would you consider it skill? Would you consider it a combination of the two? Luck in terms of being beneficiaries of forces beyond our control, skill being beneficiary of things we do control.
It's a combination of both. I think we are very proactive as a county, and we are continually looking at what's going on, and when we see anomalies, we address them quickly. And I also think that when things like the state budget impacts happen, we are engaged early in the process to come up with long-term solutions to make sure we're not caught with issues. And I also think our fund balance critical. And with the budget impasse, it proved the importance of having that money. We were able to provide services, whereas other counties had to cut things off. Or borrow. But then some of them had gotten into issues because they couldn't pay the money back at year end. And so they had to get court orders to go beyond the tax anticipation and deadlines. It's just not good.
Dana, you folks certainly were proactive, particularly with the state budget debacle. This is good news, very good news. But, you know, we have to keep vigilant down the road because things happen. I know I'm preaching to the choir here, and my colleagues are certainly on this too. You know. We do have comparatively low county taxes, but we have to keep working to keep them that way. So I think we should be happy today, but we have to keep at it.
We'll be back in May to play with the Adams. Anytime you're dealing with the government 3 years out,
Yeah.
unless you're making changes, it's a negative income.
And just for the record, you would be here, even if there was bad news, you would be here at this time of the year and any year to give your report.
Right. Probably in January. We really got to move it up. Faster. Yeah, and we did have this scheduled earlier, but there was some conflict.
Anything else, Dave? Anybody else have any questions?
Well, a couple of things. First of all, you know, just relative to the state budget situation, you know, none of our counties, including Cumberland County, should be in a situation where we can't rely on the state meeting its obligations. And so the fact of the matter that we have, you know, all these additional funds in reserve, we shouldn't necessarily have to have those funds in reserve because the state hasn't met its obligations. So that's one point. The other question I had was relative to the increase in subsidies from 2014, and you said most of that was children and youth. How much of that was related to the salary increases that were granted in that area in July? Do you know?
Do you know that off the top of your head? I don't know. We do have that number also.
Because I know that, you know, yeah, I mean, that while the state pays a portion, you know, we also, and that impacts our subsidy.
The majority of this was from services, from the having to do more.
Sandusky-related services.
Okay.
I didn't want to say.
Well, we were, yeah, that's right. We were, yeah, okay. All right.
Yeah, but yes, it did go up some because of salaries, but a lot of this is because of the services.
Okay. Yeah, if there would be a way you could show the growth in real estate revenues like over the past 10 years and that would be good. Because I'd like to know, I think that might give us a good handle on how we're faring with respect to, you know, our economy here with respect to real estate. And I mean, you know, as far as the real estate revenues, I don't think the state budget had anything to do with real estate revenues.
One of our graphs shows the assessment base, the growth in the assessment base, and I think that is the most comparable one. We just have to pull off the reassessment here because there's an increase because of the.
I'd just be curious to see whether, you know, what that looks like now. But we know we had a slump. You know, we had, like everybody else, we're not an island unto ourselves. We had a slump following 2008 and continued for a number of years.
And let me follow up, like I said, we increase the base, we also lower the millage. So the base from year to year is important, so when the reassessment period is hard to tell. So that's what we use as our indicator of growth, because it doesn't have the uncollectibles in there, it doesn't have.
But that natural revenue growth is important in terms of us being able to meet, you know, those fixed cost increases that we always face.
And so it also shows a year-to-year comparison excluding tax increase or adjustments to the millage, however you want to phrase it. It's just base to base.
Okay.
We'll show that.
Thank you, Dave. Okay, is there any other business to be be brought in front of the board? Seeing, hearing none, is there a motion for adjournment? So we're adjourned. Thank you.